Hello, in this video I am going to take you through all the information that you can access on the screen of the Scrambler 1200 here, and all the menus and how you set things, how you change the settings, etc. So it's going to be hopefully as comprehensive a review as I'm capable of doing anyway of the screen and the menus on the Scrambler 1200. The first thing you need to know is that there are 3 buttons on the bike for accessing the information that's available on the screen. The first of these buttons is on the right hand side switch cluster, and it's this button here, this grey button at the bottom, and that one simply accesses the menu system. So you press it once to access the menu, press it again to come out of the menu system. And then on the left handlebar on the switch cluster here, there are 2 buttons you can use. The most important one is this one down here just past the horn, and this is a toggle button, so you can press it right, you can pull it left, push it up, you can push it down, and that's to navigate around the menus, and then it pushes in. It's a push button as well to select the item that you're on. So that's the main toggle button that you'll be using to navigate around the various screens that are available. This button here, so this is the indicator button, so the button here just above the indicator, that's a fast access to the rider mode. So if you press that, it takes you into the rider modes. You can then select whichever rider mode you want very quickly without having to dive into the menu system. As I go through the menus here and show you the information, please bear in mind that my bike is the XE model. It's the Scrambler 1200 XE. So all of the information and the settings that I'm showing you may not be available on all bikes. The first thing I'll do is I'll take you through the various basic screens that you can access and the information you can access on those screens, and then I'll take you into the menu system. So the first thing I want to point out is the first screen I'm on here is setting the contrast on the screen. If you see this information window at this side here, I've got it on the low contrast or night setting. You can have it on that. Now I'm working the toggle button on the left hand handlebar, and if I push the toggle up, it goes then onto automatic, or it goes onto high contrast, which is the daytime mode. Now I'll just quickly flick it onto that high contrast, and you can see everything comes up as bright white there. But what happens when I do this is it sort of messes with the exposure setting on my camera, and so I think it's just easier to show you the information on the low contrast, but just be aware that you can get the 2. Now I usually leave mine on the middle one, which is automatic, so I'll put it back on automatic because I'm in the workshop at the moment where there's lower lighting. Then it stays on that low contrast. So this is the first screen. So you can see the information that you've got on here. You've got the speedometer here, and I've got that set in miles per hour, so that's digital. I've got that set in miles per hour. You can change that to kilometers per hour. You've got the ref counter here, which works as a sweeping needle round. You've got the fuel gauge at the side. That's not registering at the moment because I haven't got the bike switched on. Also, I should point out that the ABS light is flashing, and the oil warning light, oil pressure light, is on simply because I haven't started the engine. It's not a problem with the bike. And then you can see on this side here, the green light with the dotted beams coming from it. That shows that I've got the light set in the LED mode, the LED light. If I flick it onto the dip beam, you can see that goes out. It's just a quirk. I don't know why. It's a quirk with Triumph. It's that you get an indicator on the dash when you haven't got the lights on, when you've just got the LED light on, but when you put the actual proper lights on, that goes out. But that's just the way it is. If I then work the toggle button on the left hand handlebar and push it to the right, that takes us onto the next screen. And with that one, we can then choose between two different themes for the dashboard. I've got it in theme 1, which I've just talked you through. So if I switch it then to theme 2, you can see the whole appearance of the dashboard changes. This time, we've got the speedometer here displayed as a traditional gauge, which will go around obviously when the engine's running. And the ref counter is at this side here, again, as a gauge. So you've got the choice between the two. My preference is 1. So again, that tells you which of the themes you're in at this side. So you've got 1 or 2. So again, working the toggle switch on the left-hand handlebar, just press 1 and go back to 1. That's the theme which I normally use. Sometimes I switch it to the other one just for a bit of fun. But this is the one that I find most useful for 2 reasons. One is you've got a very exact speedo reading there, which you can just at a glance, you immediately see how fast you're going if you hit a speed limit or a speed camera or something like that. And also you've always got your fuel gauge at the side here. But more on that in a moment. If I press my toggle switch on the left-hand handlebar to the right once more, that takes me into the next screen, which then starts showing me information back with the odometer. So we've got the total mileage you've got on the bike here, which obviously you can't change because that's, and also it says above that trip 1. So we've got trip meter 1. And then what you get then is a display of your trip details. So down this side here, you can see first of all how many miles I've got on the trip meter 1, which is 90 miles there, the amount of time you've been traveling, and the average speed that you've been traveling. If I push the toggle button on the left-hand handlebar down, that takes me into trip meter 2 settings. So here we've got trip meter 2. So again, you can see I haven't set that one for quite a while. So again, it's sort of all the same information, but you've got the 2 separate trip meters. If I press the toggle on the left-hand handlebar to the right once more, it takes us into the next screen. And this next screen is all about your fuel consumption. So the display in the middle doesn't change. That's still got your miles per hour digital and your ref counter. You've still got your fuel gauge down the side, but it's the information in this side screen down here that changes. So what you've got here then is your average miles per gallon. You can change the settings of this. I'll show you how to do that. So you can either have it in UK miles per gallon, which I have, or US miles per gallon, because of course, don't forget that a US gallon is different to a UK imperial gallon. And then that's the average since I last reset it. So if I just press the left-hand toggle button in, once that will reset that. Underneath that, it's not showing anything because that's your current fuel consumption, and that's live. So that changes as you're riding along. And then the bottom one, which again has got no figures because the bike's not running and I'm not moving along, that tells you the range. So based on your current fuel consumption, it works out how much range you've got left with the fuel in your tank. And incidentally, you can see on mine, it's the average fuel consumption there from my last ride is just over 60 miles per gallon. That's a UK gallon. If you ride the bike hard, obviously that drops a little bit. If I'm just tootling around, that goes up. Sometimes I get it up to about 68 miles per gallon if I'm touring and just riding 50, 60 miles an hour around. And so the typical range I get on the bike is about 180 miles from a tank. Typical. Sometimes I get more if I'm riding gently, sometimes a bit less. So I'm usually looking to fill up with fuel after about 150, 160 miles. Again, once more to the right, it takes us onto the next information screen. And again, you'll see with all of these, as I flick through, the information on the central screen stays the same, your fuel gauge stays the same, it's just the information down this side that's changing. And what you've got here is you can cycle through 3 different lots of information. What I have displayed at the moment is the engine temperature, which as the bike's not running, obviously there's no temperature on there at the moment. If I press the toggle button down rather than right again, so if I press it down, it then comes up with another screen which shows me the tyre pressure. This bike has tyre pressure sensors front and rear. Again, there's no information there because the bike's not moving, it has to be moving. And you need to half a mile or so before it starts registering. I've got that in PSI. You can change that to bars or other settings. Again, I'll show you in the menu how you do that, but I've got that set in PSI. So that's the next bit of information. Very useful, that, just to be able to check your tyre pressures with that. And then the third one, again, if I press the toggle button down again, tells me the number of miles to the next service or the date, the next service, and you reset that when you service the bike. I have made a separate video showing how to reset those. There are a few tools you can use to do that, but the one I use is called the dealer tool. So if you look at my other videos, you'll see how to reset those service intervals. If I press the toggle button down once more, it comes back to the engine temperature. So it cycles through those three lots of information: engine temperature, the tyre pressures, and your mileage or time to the next service. If I press the toggle button to the right once more, it takes me back onto that first screen, which is for setting the contrast, whether you want it on the brighter daytime mode, nighttime mode, or as I've got it on automatic. So you can cycle through this either to the left or the right. So I've been pressing the toggle button to the right like this, but you can go backwards by pressing the toggle button to the left as well, and go back through the screens like that. Other warning lights that are available on the dash then include main beams. So as I said, this light here indicates that you're in the LED lighting mode. If I flick on the low beam, that light disappears. So when you've got it in low beam, there's no lights on, warning lights, that's to say. If I put it on main beam, you can see then that the main beam warning light comes on there. Put it back off onto low beam, flick it back onto the LED. You've also got your indicator flashing lights, so that's the left indicator on, the right indicator on as well. On mine, I've got the spotlights fitted, so if I put the lights on and I put the spotlights on, then we've got a warning on the digital dashboard there to tell you that the spotlights are on. Also, if I put cruise control on, I can't do that because the bike is not running, but there is an indicator comes on the screen there to tell you that you've got cruise control on, and it tells you what speed that cruise control is set at as well. I also have the inbuilt heated handlebar grips on mine. There's 3 levels of heat for it. So if I just press that on, you can probably see there's a little light comes on. It by default comes on to the highest setting. The light is red and it's got 3 dots next to it. If I press it again, it goes on to the medium setting, which is amber with 2 dots under it. Press it again, that's the lowest setting, that's then yellow with just 1 dot, and press it again. So the heated handlebar switch just toggles through from high, medium, low and off. You will see at the top of the information panel here, there's a digital clock there. And you can change that and reset that in the menu system. I'll show you that when we go into the menus. There is no ambient air temperature gauge on this bike. It's the same dash as Triumph put on some of the other bikes, and I believe on some of the other bikes there is actually an air temperature sensor on it, but not on this bike, so you don't get that information on the screen. You also get a gear indicator on the screen, comes up here. If I just put the bike into run mode, then you can see that it's come up there as in neutral, and the neutral is in green, so it shows up as you cycle up through the gears. It'll tell you what gear you're in, so it won't change without the engine running. Also, then when I switch the bike on, you can see there's an indication here about what ride mode you are in. So the different symbols for the different ride modes, that's the symbol for road mode there. Obviously, the engine light has just come on because I've switched the engine on, but it's not running. As well as the fuel gauge down this side, which is now registered because I just switched the ignition on, there is a low fuel warning light comes on, and you actually get 2. So you get an actual light at the top here, and also you get a symbol on the digital screen as well. So yeah, you certainly can't say that you're not made aware when you're getting low on fuel. and it will also then flash up the information of how much fuel you've got left. So we've got the range here, so you can see on mine it's showing the range as 220 miles, so it just was there showing the range of 220 miles, which obviously is a guess because I'm not the bike's not running. But once you get onto reserve, it will flash up on the screen here how many miles you've got left, how many miles of fuel you've got left. If you switch the traction control off, so for example, if you're in one of the off-road modes, you've got the traction control off, then you get a symbol on the screen that warns you that the traction control is off. And also something which a lot of people see, I've seen a lot of posts about this on Facebook, when it's due a service or some issue with the bike that needs looking at, then the little yellow spanner appears on the dashboard. Some people have found that little spanner comes up after they've disconnected the battery for some reason, and that's quite simply because they need to reset the clock. So I'll be showing you how to reset the clock on it. So if your little spanner comes up after you've had the battery off, you've been doing some work on the bike, you simply need to reset the clock to today's date. However, if you've given the bike a service and it's past its service interval, then you will need to reset that spanner icon using something like the dealer tool. And I've made a separate video about that. Just look up that video on my channel. One last screen which I didn't show you when I flicked through. Sorry, I skipped over it. So after the screen where we can change the theme, we've got the two different themes. The next screen is about how much information you get on the screen. So at the moment I've got it showing everything. You can automatically hide information, or you can hide certain information which is programmable within the menu system. Again, I'll show you that. Or you can hide all. So if I press hide all, then what we get then is when that resets, can you see all of the information has disappeared apart from just your ref counter and your mileometer. That's all you get. So if you want that sort of clutter-free, less distracting screen, you can get rid of all of that other information. To be honest, I never use that simply because I feel, what's the point in having access to that information and not using it? And it's not really distracting. So I'll put that show all. So again, just to recap, you can show all of the information. You can go in and program it and decide what information you want to show, or you can hide it all. So those are the different screens that we got. If I go into the second theme mode, remember this is the one with that's the speedometer there and the ref counter at the side, then again we can cycle through the same information down this side. So that's the information about mileage, distances, your trip meter, etc. That's your screen about fuel consumption, your average, your current, your range, and then that's the screen where you can show your temperature, the tyre pressure, and the distance to the next service. So I would call this more of a classic style screen. It's kind of quite nice. It's very stylish. I mean, like for instance, like the mileometer at the bottom there, it looks like the old mechanical ones, with the little wheels that click round. It's quite nice, is that one. But as I said before, I prefer to keep it on the other style one. So flick it back up to that one, and that's the style that I keep it on. Let's have a look at rider modes and how you can change the rider modes. You can access the rider modes by going into the menu system, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But the quickest and easiest way of changing rider modes, if you simply want to change between modes, is to press the rider mode button, which is on the left hand handlebar just above the indicator switch. So if I press that once now, you will see what happens here is down this side here, the different rider modes appear, and I'm using then the toggle button to toggle up and down. So what we have here, if I start with this one, with a picture of a rider with a helmet on, that's rider mode. So that's the rider programmable mode. Then we have rain mode. We have road mode. That's highlighted in red because that's the one I'm setting at the moment. Oh, it just jumps out if you don't press the button for a second. Then we've got sports mode, which is like the twisty road icon. We've then got off-road mode and then off-road pro. And then we come back round to rider mode. Now, I mentioned earlier that mine is the XE model. If you have a different model, all of those different rider modes may not be available to you. But we've got those different rider modes here, and as I flick between the rider modes, you will see on the main screen here it tells you the settings. So if I put it on road mode, there's 3 different settings that each mode changes there. It changes the ABS setting, that's the first one there. It's going to keep jumping out of this, isn't it? Then it changes the traction control, and it changes the throttle response, which it calls map. Each one of those is customizable when you go into the menu system. So I'll go into the menu system now and show you how to customize those. But if you just quickly want to change between different riding modes, you press the mode button once. Use the toggle button to go up and down to select the one you want. So if I wanted off-road, then you press the toggle button in and it will actually select that off-road mode. So let's come out of that then and go into the main menu. So to access the main menu where you can reset things, change settings, you press the menu button, which is on the right handlebar. If I press that menu button now, you can see it pulls up the main menu, and you will see that there are 4 areas that you can customize and change on that main menu. I'll go into each one of these in detail, but quick overview, we've got riding modes, which we've already had a look at there, but we'll go into that in more detail. If I just press down on the toggle button, then we've got bike setup. Again, we'll look at that in detail. Trip setup, display setup, and then the last one there is reset to defaults, and you will find on each of the menu screens that bottom option is to reset to defaults. So if you press that one, obviously it resets everything. If I press the toggle button down again, it just takes us to the back. So you can go up and down the menu by pressing the toggle button up or down. If you want to select a menu item, you press the toggle button in. So I'll press the toggle button in now, riding modes. You can see now that within the riding modes menu, it pulls up those 6 different riding modes that I mentioned before. And I'll emphasize again, I've got 6 different riding modes on my bike. You may not have all of those accessible on your bike. So we've got rider customizable, rain, road, sport, off-road, and off-road pro. Now what I was trying to explain before is if I come back up to the rider mode, in each of these rider modes, what it changes is 3 things: the ABS, which is the braking system, what it calls the map, which is the throttle response, and then the traction control. So this rider one is totally customizable however you want it. So you can choose any one of those, ABS, and again, if I press the toggle button in to select that, then you can then choose between different options that you want there with that. So let's go look at, so if I press the toggle button left, it brings you out of the menu. Let's have a look at a couple of different modes to see how they differ. So if I go into the rain mode, then we've got, again, all these menus are the same: ABS, map, and traction control. But if we go to the ABS, it's got the ABS set for road. If I go into the map, the throttle response, it's got that set for rain. So you can see that will then have a softer throttle response for riding in the rain. And then the traction control, it's got that set for rain. So again, the traction control will be slightly more sensitive. If I come out of that rain mode, let's have a look at sport mode. So with sport mode, the ABS is the standard road ABS there. We look at the mapping, and we've got sport mapping. So it gives more aggressive response on the throttle. So essentially when you open the throttle, because it's all just digital, it's a fly-by-wire, it just opens the throttle a bit more sharply. Doesn't give you more power, just changes the throttle response. And then traction control is sport, so presumably that's a slightly more aggressive traction control. Within each of these menus, there's the reset to default. So if you've been customizing an individual riding mode and you want to reset it back to default, you can reset that one to default, back to default, without changing any of the others. Whereas if I come out of this menu and we've got the overall riding modes, if you want to set them all back to default, you just go to the reset default and that will set them all back to default. The Scrambler XE, certainly the XE model, my model, has optimized cornering ABS on it. So if you put it in the off-road mode, what it does is it leaves the ABS on, but it tries to make it less intrusive. So it switches the ABS off on the rear wheel, so you can spin the rear wheel, and also it switches the cornering ABS off, but it leaves the ABS on the front wheel, so you're not going to lock up the front wheel and wash out your front wheel. Whereas if you go into the off-road pro mode, the ABS is disabled totally. So the front ABS is off, the rear ABS is off, and the cornering ABS is off. If you put it in that mode, then the ABS warning light will be on, just to warn you that you haven't got any ABS on. We're going to bike setup, and you can see there are 3 things that you can change, customize here: your indicators, your traction control, and then you can go into service information. So if we have a look at the first one, indicators, you can see there that there are 3 different settings for your indicators. I've got it on the auto advanced, but if we put it in manual, I think that speaks for itself. You have to cancel the indicators yourself. If you put it in auto basic, then the indicators flash for something like 8 seconds, I think it is, and then they switch off. Whereas with auto advanced, it's got 2 different modes. If you give the indicator button just a short press, the indicators flash just 3 times, I think it is, just briefly. Or if you give the indicator switch a longer press, hold it for a bit longer, then it's the same as the auto basic. It will flash for 8 seconds, or I think it's 8 seconds or something like 60 meters, something like that. So I leave it in the auto advanced mode. That's the indicators. We come out of that one. The next one is traction control. So that's where you switch the traction control on or off. So if for any particular reason you want to switch the traction control off, that's how you get into do it. But as I already showed you within the rider modes, I would just go into off-road pro if I wanted to switch the traction control off. But you can actually go in there and manually switch it off in that menu. Come out of that one, and then the last item there is service. We press on that one, and it tells you then how many miles to your next service, or how long to your next service, and the date of the next service, how many days, and the date of the next service. To reset those and change those, you need to be able to go in with a service tool. I use Dealer Tool. I've made a separate video about how to go in though and reset those. The next menu item is for your trip meter, and there's 3 options there. You can reset trip meter 1. I told you earlier there's 2 different trip meters, sorry. You can reset trip meter 2, or you can actually take trip meter 2 off. So if you only want 1 trip meter, you can actually remove that one from your menu display. I never use this menu because you can reset the trip meters directly from the screen when you're just viewing them on the screen by pressing and holding the toggle button. So that's a screen which I never use. So let's come out of that one then. The final area on the main menu, this last one here, is display setup, and there's actually quite a lot you can change with this. So let's go in and have a look. So the first thing you can do is set the theme there. If I press on that, we've got the 2 different themes. But again, I showed you how you can change that directly on the display without having to go into the menu. I've got it on theme 1. I'll just leave it on that. But what you can do here is, when you've got it set between day mode or night mode, and remember I've got it on night mode at the moment, you can change the brightness. So if I just select that one, at the side here, you can see, and you use the toggle switch to toggle up and down for how bright that is. I've got that on the maximum setting. But again, if I come down to the low contrast one, I've got that on the maximum setting as well. But if you wanted just to turn it down so it was not so bright and distracting, perhaps you're riding at night and you're finding it a bit bright, then you can turn that down if you want. But as you see, I've left mine on the maximum. The next one is quite interesting, visible trays. So that's all of the different information that are displayed. When I was showing you through the screens, I showed you there were 3 modes. One was where you got all of the information displayed, which is what I leave mine in. The second mode is where you can get rid of it all, so all you've got is your ref counter and your speedo. But the third one was a customizable one, and this is where you customize it. So it takes you through each item of information that is available, and you can decide whether you want that or not. So you can sort of choose some of them, or not all of them, according to whatever you want. So yeah, it's quite useful, I suppose, if some information is important to you but you want to leave other items off. But I just leave it with all of the information on. So let's come out of that visibility traits. The next item here is the gear shift indicator, and that tells you when to change gear if you want that information. So I have it disabled. I always have it disabled, but you can have it on the default, or the default is 7,000 RPM, or you can set it yourself. So if you're going to use a defined one there, you can see it's set at 7,000 RPM, but you can change that up or down if you want to. But I have it. I don't want the bike telling me when to change gear. Then, nice little touch, rider name, so you can put your name in. So when it switches on, when you turn the ignition on, it says hello. So I've got mine set so it says hello Simon, puts your name on there. You can choose whatever name you want there. What language you want it in. I've got it set in English, but you can change it to other languages. Units, this is a very useful one to be able to change. If we go in and have a look at the units, you can see that you can change the units for your distance and fuel consumption, for the temperature and for tyre pressures. So if I go into the distance economy one first, you can see I've got it set in distance in miles and the fuel economy in miles per gallon, UK gallons. Of course, understand that UK gallons are different to US gallons. So if you live in the USA, you maybe want the second one, which is miles and US, miles per gallon. Or you can set it in kilometers for distance. So if I'm touring on the continent in Europe, then I quite often switch it to kilometers. That's more useful because it gives me things like the speedo in kilometers per hour, and it tells me how far it is to wherever I'm going in kilometers, which then matches with the road signs that I'm looking at. Your fuel consumption there, your economy, you can either have as litres per 100 kilometers or kilometers per litre, whichever one you prefer. So as I said, my default there is miles and UK miles per gallon. So that's fully customizable. That one is very useful. The next one is just for your temperature, for the engine temperature. You can either have it in centigrade or Fahrenheit. I leave it in centigrade. And then your tyre pressures. So I've got it set in PSI, but you've got options of other units if you would prefer to use those other units. Being British, I'm used to PSI, so I'll leave it in that. So that's your units, the different units that you can change. So that's one area of the menu which is very useful. Moving more down the display setup menu, the next one is clock, which speaks for itself. You can set the clock, so you can have it whether you want it 12 hours or 24 hours. You can then set the hours and the minutes. So if you've disconnected your battery, you can reset it there. So I've got it in a 24-hour clock, and obviously the time is right just at the moment. Reset the date, that's the one that you need to go in. If you've had the battery off and you put it back in, it'll go back to some kind of default date, and which will show that then that your service is overdue, and you'll get that mechanic icon. So you need to go into this one and reset the date. So you can choose what format you want the date in, and then you can set the the year, the month, the day, etc. So that's a useful area to go into. Again, that's in the display setup at the bottom. So there we are. We've gone all the way through the menus there. If I come out of that, back to the main menu, that was the last area, display setup, and then obviously we've got the reset to default. So that's through the menu system. So if I come out of that by pressing the menu button again, brings me back onto the main display screen. So there you are. That's a pretty comprehensive review of the instruments and how to change all the settings on the Triumph Scrambler 1200. I hope you found that useful. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Bye.